Hey guys, how's it going today? So, J.J. Abrams long promised that The Rise of Skywalker would bring all 9 Star Wars movies together and make them feel like a cohesive trilogy. And while it could have done much more, I kind of feel like this one ties the last 3 sequels very, very nicely. However, tying the last 9 films, I feel like there could have been a couple little tweaks here or there that would have really brought it all together very cohesively. The film boasted the return of Emperor Palpatine, the return of the Sith, the final victory of the Jedi, and the final redemption of Luke Skywalker. Most significantly though, it was the return of many prequel characters unseen since Episode 3 and the Clone Wars and Rebels cartoons. During Rey's training under Princess Leia, one of Rey's main goals is to connect with the Jedi of ages past. She pleads with them to be with her, but feels no guidance from them. How can they not help her when she's the last of the Jedi? Despite feeling alone, Rey perseveres and keeps fighting until she gets to the throne of Palpatine. There, he uses darkside powers to suck the life force from her and Ben, thus regenerating himself to full power. Their combined energy essentially resurrects the Lord of the Sith. At this moment, Rey and Ben have had virtually all their Force energy sucked out of them, and Ben tries to get up and fight, but Palpatine Force pushes him into a hole, just as the last Skywalker did to him in Episode 6. Rey meanwhile can barely move as Palpatine disables every rebel ship on the planet and destroys the light side for good. Defeat is certain and hope is lost. The only thing Rey can do is plead one more time for the Jedi to be with her, because if all the Sith have returned, then it will take all the Jedi to defeat them. It's here that her patience and perseverance finally pays off. She has shown herself worthy of the Jedi, having completely cast off any vestiges of the Sith heritage that courses through her veins. Maybe this is why they never spoke to her, or maybe they didn't feel she was worthy enough yet. She hears all the voices of the Jedi past that have any connection with Emperor Palpatine, speaking to her from the netherworld of the Force. She closes her eyes and hears the voices of Jedi not just from the sequels, prequels, and original, but even Star Wars animated series such as the Clone Wars and Rebels. She hears Jedi encouraging her to find the light, Rey. You're not alone, Rey.
Alone? Never have you been.
Let it guide you as it guided us. Feel the Force flowing through you. Rise, Rey. We stand behind you, Rey. So which Jedi are saying all of these things? And you all know I'm extremely excited that Anakin's voice was actually in the movie. Of course I would have liked for him to be there in the bluey flesh as a Force ghost, but at least we got his voice, man. Well, the first voice is Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi saying, "These are your final steps, Rey. Rise and take them." This is a reference to The Force Awakens when we hear his voice at the end of the visions that she sees after she touches Anakin's lightsaber in Maz Kanata's castle. There he says, "These are your first steps," with Alec Guinness's voice thrown in there with Ewan to say the name Rey. But McGregor isn't the only prequel voice we hear. There's Liam Neeson as Qui Gon Jinn, who's one of my favorite Jedi, telling Rey, "Every Jedi who ever lived lives in you," as well as Samuel Jackson as Mace Windu, which was a big surprise to me because I was like, how did he learn to become a Force ghost? But I guess I can cover that in a video. I mean, we don't know yet for sure in canon, but there are answers in Legends, especially considering as to how Anakin did it so quickly. And if you're wondering as to how Anakin did it so quickly, which is how I think Mace and the others might have done it too, I've made several videos on this in the past, a couple years ago, but I'll just reiterate it here for those of you who haven't seen that video. Basically, Anakin's dying as he's looking at Luke, and just before he's about to just completely die, his Force essence is just going to go back to the universe, and his consciousness will completely go forever. Obi-Wan communes with him through the Force, because what he did was such a light side thing, sacrificing his life to defeat the Emperor, bring balance to the Force, kill the last Sith, and of course, bring himself back to the light as Anakin Skywalker and save his son. So Obi-Wan tells Anakin to listen up really quick, and Anakin's like, "Whoa, how are you doing this?" And Obi-Wan gets very snappy with him. He's like, "Look, we don't have much time. If you do not listen to me quickly, you will cease to exist entirely. So listen up, do what I tell you, and you'll become a Force ghost." So he does it in that split second, and then that's how Anakin became a Force ghost. Now, I don't know how they're going to do it now in the new canon, but this was the old Legends information material from, it was a really old Legends book. I believe it was called The Rise and Fall of Darth Vader. It had a pink cover. It was a good book. But anyways, in there it explains how this actually happened. So it would lead me to assume that maybe this is how Mace Windu also became a Force ghost, and Ahsoka, well, we don't really know how Ahsoka died, but we at least know that she died. Unless she was communing to Rey from somewhere distant in the galaxy, but I highly doubt that. So all of these people are obviously dead. Qui Gon was the first one to become a Force ghost through the Force as just a voice, because he didn't actually learn how to bring his body into the whole thing until just before Episode 4, A New Hope, where we learn in the canon novel from a certain point of view that he does actually become this physical shape of who he used to be, and he's telling Obi-Wan that how you can do this and all that. But it was Qui Gon who initially learned how to do this, and then he transferred his knowledge to Yoda after his death. And this is why in Attack of the Clones in Episode 2, we're going really off topic here, but this is interesting, how in Attack of the Clones in Episode 2, we hear Qui-Gon's voice when Anakin kills the Tusken Raiders in his fit of rage after they killed his mother, because that moment wasn't supposed to happen, and Qui-Gon saw it as terrible, and he's just screaming through the Force to the point where Yoda can now actually hear it, and it makes me wonder if Anakin never heard it too. And Mace says, "Feel the Force flow through you, Rey." We also hear the familiar voice of Yoda saying,
"Alone, never have you been."
Okay, so given the word order, it was obvious who was saying that. Finally, at the end, we hear the emphatic Luke Skywalker saying, "Rey, the Force will be with you, always." Besides all the live-action voices, there are other Clone Wars and Rebels voices too. Jennifer Hale as Twi'lek Jedi Aayla Secura, and she also appeared in Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, where she was killed in Order 66, who says, "Let it guide you as it guided us." Adi Gallia and Luminara Unduli throw in some words of encouragement as well. We also hear Kanan Jarrus saying, "In the heart of a Jedi lies her strength," and even hear Ahsoka Tano simply say, "In the light, find the light." This of course means that Ahsoka is dead by this point, which may explain why she's not in the sequel trilogy at all. Rumor has it is that we will get a sequel to the Rebels show, which will probably explain what happens to her and her search for Ezra. I imagine that we'll also learn in that show how Palpatine returns, since Ezra went to the unknown regions where the Sith planet Exegol is. Perhaps that's where he and Thrawn end up. Alright, so back to the voices. There's one more, and maybe you thought I forgot, but really I just wanted to save the best one for last. The most important prequel voice that we hear is that of Hayden Christensen as Anakin Skywalker, who finally makes a return to canon as the Chosen One. Now, I think one of the things that could have really made this film tie in all 9 movies, because to me it just kind of felt like it tied in the last 3 films, the sequel trilogy. However, one thing that they could have done that would make it just feel very cohesive, even more cohesive, would be to bring him back as a Force ghost. But unfortunately we didn't get that. We only got to hear his voice, but we heard it very loud and clear, begging Rey to bring back the balance, Rey, as I did. He also says, "The Force surrounds you, Rey." After she hears all these voices and gathers her strength, Palpatine cackles, "I am all the Sith," as he levels his final attack against her. But Rey responds like a true Jedi and says, "And I am all the Jedi," kind of like an Iron Man moment from Endgame. Then she makes his face melt off like Raiders of the Lost Ark, which might have been a nod to George Lucas, who knows. Now that we know who all the voices are, I want to know if you were disappointed we only get voices rather than Force ghosts. I was really disappointed in that sense. I really wish we got to see them. I feel like it just would have made the story all that much more cohesive. However, at least we got to hear their voices, and that for me was a big up, so I'm happy we got that at the very least. Would you guys have liked to see all the Jedi come to her aid, or do you think that would have cheapened Rey's personal victory over her grandfather? I know a lot of Rey fans loved the way it ended, but I'm an Anakin fan, and I would have loved for it to end with him coming back in, the bluey flesh as a Force ghost. However, that being said, was there another Jedi that you would have liked to have heard? Ki-Adi-Mundi, or Plo Koon, or someone else. Now, something that could have been kind of cool was if we would have heard Maul's voice in this. Now, hear me out. His redemption is hinted at in Rebels when he dies. That would have been pretty crazy. As Sam Witwer explained, Maul's death ended the same way that Qui-Gon's death ended, in Obi-Wan's arms. And he says, "Train the Chosen One," essentially. It's very poetic like that. Anyways, that's a bit of a stretch to hear Maul's voice. However, it's just a thought. After all, no one hates Sidious more than Maul, so really, it would not be too far of a stretch, I guess. But also, of course, he's a Sith, so why would he live on in the Force? That wouldn't really make sense at all. Anyways, there's just my brain doing its thing. I have tons of questions, and I hope we get some answers revealed in canon information. However, of course, it would be nice if a lot of this stuff was revealed in the movie, but that just leaves more content to cover later in the future. Hope you have an awesome rest of your day. I'll see you in the next video, and until then, remember, the Force will be with you, always.
Now, fulfill